I'm going to lead a series of panel discussions today, ladies and gentlemen, on different aspects of leadership. And the first subject that we are going to tackle today is something called agents of change. So I'm going to ask Matsi Modise to join us. First of all, Managing Director of Simodisa. It's an industry association whose mission is to accelerate entrepreneurship by collaborating with policymakers to enhance the success rate of high-impact, high-growth entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is absolutely critical. Matsi, are you ready to join us? Kanye Dlomo, are you with us as well? Kanye Dlomo has enjoyed a media career as an award-winning television news anchor. He's the publisher of Destiny and Destiny Man magazines. Ladies and gentlemen, Christine Ramon is with us, a qualified chartered accountant. She joined AngloGold Ashanti as Chief Financial Officer and Executive Director with effect 1 October 2014. Christine, please have a seat. She's held senior financial management and executive positions in various companies. Basani Maluleki is with us as well, Director of Transcend Capital and a co-founder of African Century Ventures. And Kanyisa Nkamani is a qualified actuary and currently a full-time MBA candidate at the Columbia Business School in New York. I am terrified of actuaries. And please have a seat here. Wow. This is a fairly intimidating group of people that I have to engage with. You sure there's no one else that can host this panel discussion? Okay. Kanye, let me start with you, if I may. All of you are in a position of leadership in one way or another. Was leadership thrust upon you, or have you grown into the job? Were you born to it?
I think that's quite a difficult question, Jeremy, and I don't think that there's one answer. I think that several things happen. In terms of being born into leadership, I think a certain aspect of one's childhood, whether it's examples of people that you see as you grow up, or what you read, or education exposure that you've had, certainly some leadership brushes off or rubs off on you from there. But there are instances where one is thrust into leadership. I think of Madiba's quote that says, something along the lines of, circumstances often call upon a generation to lead and to rise up, and that's not something that you've created. Leadership is thrust upon you, and once that happens, you then have to grow into that position. So I think it's a combination of different things, and it just depends on the circumstances which aspect of leadership manifests.
Matsi, I'm going to assume that you agree with much of that, so let me move on and ask you how you've grown into leadership, and perhaps more importantly, where the obstacles have been, where the difficulties have been.
I think it's important to, navigate through the sphere of life. For example, I started off as an investment banker, and then I decided that's not going to work for me. I need to pursue my purpose and perhaps also my passion.
Why didn't an investment banker work for you?
Well, it's a heartless environment, if I had to be frank. It does not have a heart, and it's about how do you walk into an institution, work from 9 to 5. And as young as I was, 23 years old, I felt like this cannot be it. There has to be more to life. So then throwing myself out of that, I realized that, well, now I'm going to pursue my passion. And it so happens that the things that I love then propelled me into positions of, perhaps leadership, because I'm passionate about it. I'm going to drive it. I'm really, really pushing something that I feel very strongly about. So, when you're in that kind of environment, you have no other choice but to lead and to fulfill your own purpose and to essentially just pursue what it is that you want, and then you'll be regarded as a leader I'm a leader in my own world. It's great that everybody would perhaps see me as a leader, but in my own world that I've created, I feel like, the purpose is clear, and I just have to push and ensure that, I achieve what I need to achieve. And it's great that, many people might want to come onto the journey. And also, my purpose is one that has to do with how do I empower others? How do I empower a space in South Africa, which is entrepreneurship, that's going to empower everybody else?
Christine, what's the purpose that you've had to fulfill in your growth towards leadership?
So that's an interesting question, the purpose, but I think firstly I want to say good to be here today. It's not often that I certainly get to talk about myself, so it's a little different. In terms of purpose and the role, I guess if you'd asked me that purpose probably when I was 18 years old and just finishing school to where I am today, I think it evolved over a period of
So when
time.
you were 18 years, about 10 years ago then, okay?
Well, I'm 48 years old, so I've actually been working for a period of about 30 years.
Don't worry, it goes downhill from 50. I speak from experience, yeah.
Okay. So, it did evolve, like I said, over a period of time. And I guess in my 20s and 30s, it was about making a difference. And it was probably a little bit more selfish than where I am today. I think having matured now in the corporate world, and I don't think you can sort of separate your job from your life as much, because I think if you had to ask me the same about my life, it is now more about empowering others, about developing others, and really seeing how we can hold the torch for others and help them be and fulfill their own dreams going forward into the future.
Basani, one of the speakers spoke about the importance of happiness in your life. The interesting thing was happy people make better investors. Are you happy? And how do you deal with that whole notion of happiness? Because often being a leader comes with onerous responsibility. I have met very few leaders who are happy all the time. Let's tease that out a little.
Sure. So a lot is written about happiness, right? And I subscribe to the notion that happiness isn't about waking up every morning and jumping on the bed and being delirious. Happiness is something that it's a journey, not a destination. It's something that every day you cultivate within yourself. And one of the ways that I cultivate my own happiness is that I'm a runner, right? So if I have the chance to wake up in the morning and run, and with every run I try to do something cool, So
could you join Minister Khadebi and I running the Comrades this year? Would you be able to do that?
No, you'd slow me down.
Okay. Minister, let's take that from whence it comes. Yeah.
I'm running my second Comrades Marathon this year.
Okay, don't show
I'm
off.
taking it very seriously. But I think the point is, I think you have to cultivate your own happiness. Find the things in your own life that will bring you happiness, because the ups and downs of life are hectic, as you said, right? I think looking at the economy alone, it's hard to find happiness when you look at the economic outlook. So I think for me, happiness is important, and I make a habit of reading and doing the things I love to inculcate that happiness. And I fully agree. I think if you can't have your own happiness in your own life, it's very difficult to nurture other people. It's difficult to be happy and to celebrate other people's success. And it's difficult to drive people to achieve results. And as a result, your business, I think, will also suffer. So happiness is definitely a critical ingredient to success.
Tanya, so what about you? Are you happy? Not right now, but generally.
Thanks, Jeremy. And as much as I enjoyed my time in New York as a full-time student, I'm happy to announce that I'm now back.
You loved your time in New York.
I loved it. I'm now back in full employment, and I've rejoined the Old Mutual, and I'm heading up their customer propositions team. And just on behalf of the leadership, I just want to say how happy we are today to be hosting this event, to be hosting this platform that encourages this kind of debate. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you to my panelists for sharing so much of their experience and their time. As it relates to the question around happiness, I think I agree very much with what Basani said. I think it's about trying to understand and be clear around those things that make you happy, and spend as much time in those activities as you can. I don't think that we can be happy all of the time, but I think it's around sort of making sure that you've got the right kind of proportionality in terms of how much time you spend doing those things that give you that joy and that happiness.
All of you are astonishing people in one way or another, but let's get to the difficult side of the conversation now. Kanya, I'm going to come back to you. Often it is said in the boardroom that ideas that women come up with receive more scrutiny than those from male colleagues. Is that true, and how do you deal with it?
That's definitely true. I think anything that comes from an unusual place, you either ignore, which women have experienced, or you overanalyze and criticize and are frightened by. And women as decision makers, as innovators, as idea generators, is still a very unusual phenomenon, unfortunately. I've certainly experienced that as a woman, and I think that research, even in first world countries, if you look at the sort of the investment community in New York, I've just recently come back from my alma mater, Harvard Business School, where I was speaking at the Africa Business Conference, and one of the big things that people in venture capitalism spoke about there was the very low percentage of venture capital that is going to women-started ventures, even in the United States, where chances are we may have a female president. So it is a reality and it is a fact, and I think that one of the ways in which those countries are solving it and ways in which we can solve it is for more and more women to move into those decisions or decision-making positions of giving the capital. So when women become successful and make money, to think about setting up funds, or when they're in a position to choose board positions, to look at moving towards organizations that are in venture capital or in private equity, so that they can influence the decisions.
And Kanye, I
around
would
funding
suggest to you
women.
that that is noble and well-intentioned and very altruistic. But Matsi, often what happens is that when women, anybody, gets into a position of authority and power and running the business, all of those great intentions, Kanye, that you've just suggested, fall by the wayside. How do you stay true to that?
Well, I think encouraging gender parity is wonderful. But we have to consider the fact that we live in a world that awards merit, you know, your ability to get things done. You know, I tend to differ a lot when it comes to gender issues, because the reason why I left my former employers, because for the past 6 years I've been self-employed or unemployed, self-employed. And the reason why I left that world is because I knew that if I was to continue this career, you know, it has its own constraints, whether it's gender constraints, whether it's, you know, transformational constraints. So I decided to get myself into an environment where I can create my world. So I hardly find myself in a position where I am now being treated differently as a woman. You know, I find myself in a position where I have my peers, male or female, and that environment tends to be an equalizer. So it's a function of, well, if you're going to pursue yourself in an environment that is being created and it's been an all-boys club or an all-man's world, then good luck in trying to defy that. But then you also have the option of creating your own environment, which is what essentially I've done.
You can give her a round of applause if you want to. Again, if I could just ask the organizers, our technical team, could someone just give me a sign about when I need to start wrapping this up? There's no time on the front here, and I neglected to bring a watch with me today. And I don't want us still to be here at 4 o'clock. We've got 7 panels still to go, and people want to go home. So if someone can just give me the wrap-up, about 10 minutes, if you wouldn't mind. Christine Roman, back to you. You've worked in a tough, often male-dominated managerial environment. Where have the pitfalls been, and how have you individually actually had to overcome them?
Well, yes, I think, you know, I'm now qualified as an accountant, so I guess starting off in the accounting world was already male-dominated, but I think it is quite different.
Were you taken seriously when you started, or did people look at you as something of an anomaly?
In the accounting space, I'm not, you don't actually pick up that you're being treated differently. I think it's more when you move into the engineering environment. I think quite importantly is, and I tend to agree with Matsi, it does actually depend, because certain industries are, you know, more friendly to women, and typically I'd say the service industries, you know, tend to be a friendlier environment.
What does that
for
mean,
women.
more friendly to women?
I think it's in terms of the work practices, in terms of a more open environment where women can contribute. I think typically when you actually get into the sort of harder industries like mining and engineering, etc., there are very few women that are actually in leadership positions in those environments. So I guess, you know, it is about, when I joined Sasol, and that was in 2006, I was for 7.5 years at Sasol's before moving on to Anglo Gold Ashanti. So you can see I actually stuck to the harder industry. I guess there was only really one other woman in the executive space. She was in HR. So typically, as financial director of Sasol, I mean, I was under 40 at the time, and it was the first woman financial director they had for the group, and I think the same counts for Anglo Gold Ashanti. So it was sort of, a breakthrough. And I think, you're not just exposed to people in your workplace, but you're actually dealing with analysts, you're talking about the company, you're being scrutinized from every single angle. And so it is quite tough because there are certain preconceived ideas. And so I think, initially at Executive Committee, I think just bearing in mind that I did come with a track record of experience, finance and broader general management, but it is about, almost setting, how can I put it, when you move into a corporate space, it's about showing your expertise, but not trying too hard, and really contributing and adding value where you can. And it's typically in those environments where women are not actually given the opportunities to participate, whether it is key projects or to even make contributions. And it's in those spaces that when you do actually make the contribution, it's either, ignored or, it's sort of glossed over. And I think that's where it actually does require one to be quite strong. And if you're convinced you've done your homework and you really have got a point or a contribution to make, then I think it's important to then stand up for what you believe in and make the point.
So that segues, Basani, nicely into the next theme then. Okay. Often I am told to compensate and also to protect themselves in this testosterone-driven boardroom environment. Women sometimes feel they need to adopt a stereotypically male attitude in order to be heard, in order to engage more effectively. Is that true? Is it an advantage? Is it a disadvantage?
It's such a funny, I agree. I think it's true. I think it's absolutely true, especially very early in my career. That was a huge thing for me. I had to be as aggressive with the guys. I mean, at the height of my powers of trying to be a man, I found myself doing one-armed push-ups against the guys. Now, that's a losing proposition. I don't recommend that at all.
Again, I will give you 100 Rand right now.
No, but what I'm getting at is, I do think, especially early on, because you mimic that which you think is the picture of success. And if the picture of success is the white guy in the room that everybody loves...
Did you know you were consciously doing it, or did you just, was it there by osmosis?
I think definitely with hindsight I saw it. I think I may have had glimpses, but I think I was so busy trying to be an amazing investment banker, right, that you don't think about what you're doing, you just get on with it. Yeah. Then the point is, you see the goal. The goal is the bonus, it's the amazing deal, it's the headlines, right? So you're going for that, and you don't think about what is it doing to me as a human. And so for me, when I went to business school, right, took 2 years out of life, and I saw this, that, oh my gosh, have I become this person? What is this? And I had to redefine for myself what it meant to be a successful business person. When you were
doing, metaphorically, the one-armed push-up strategy, were you aware that what you were doing, or did you feel that, did it embarrass you, or did you just feel that was part of climbing the ladder? I have to actually
It was
do
successful.
Yeah.
It worked, right? Yeah. I was rewarded for mimicking these behaviors. Yeah. So it worked, but certainly it wasn't me, right? It wasn't. I was not being my authentic self. I think when I look back, I don't really like that girl from that time. I much prefer this girl who is much more about figuring out what is important to me and who I want to be, and living that dream. And I think in changing that around, one, like Christine was saying, early in your career, you don't have the option to say, this is who I want to be. Life is too hard and you're trying too hard to swim and keep your head above water. As you get older and more senior, you realize that actually you've accumulated the knowledge. You've invested in yourself. You have things to say that add enormous value. You have a very valuable contribution to make. People want to hear what you have to say. And in that space, there's a lot more room for you to say, actually, I don't have to do the one-armed push-up. What if I actually showed up in a pretty dress and and said things that appeal to me more and resonate more with who I am. And you try those strategies out, and it's a journey, right? I can't say I'm getting it right all the time, but certainly I think I'm on a different route, and I think I'm embracing more of my own gender in developing my leadership style.
Where were these one-arm push-ups actually being done? In the boardroom?
I can't give away the trade secrets of my old employer, Jeremy.
Can you pick that up for us? Just about again, I like the metaphor of the one-arm push-up. Have you had a similar experience that maybe you need to adopt that more stereotypically and often negative male attitude in order to push forward?
So I think
Can you do a one-arm push-up?
Absolutely not. So I think my experience has been different. And I think it's a function of the career path I've taken and the industry that I'm in. So I entered an industry where, I'm so very different from the profile of the rest of the people that are in that industry. So I knew from the outset that I couldn't be those people. So I'm a black woman, actually, in a field that's filled with sort of like a lot of men, white, quite technical. So I don't think that I had a choice to be anything but the person that I am. So I think I've always approached my career with authenticity. And in being myself, yes, of course, there was the risk that I would seem different or unfamiliar, strange, less than in some cases, but I don't mind being an underdog, and I don't mind it when people underestimate me.
But can being different keep you out of decision making?
I think, just to finish around the point around being underestimated, is because when people underestimate you, and this is probably, I read a book around the art of war, the element of surprise is your biggest thing in your toolkit. So they underestimate you, they don't see you coming, and in that way you can be so much more successful. Can being different keep you away from decision making? I think being different is a positive because it illustrates a diversity in the thinking, and that's what you need for effective decision making.
If you haven't read The Art of War, by the way, it's a great book in leadership. The author is Sun Tzu, which is Kanya, I've got to ask you the next question. Obviously, can you do a one-arm push-up? Okay. But let's go down the list. Matsi, can
I definitely can't.
Okay, Christine, I know you can.
Physically now, or
Okay, no, we've left the metaphors behind us. Let's just talk about the adoption of the stereotypical behavior. Do you have anything to add to that before we move on? Yeah.
Yes, I think I agree with much of what Kanyisa has said. And in fact, what Basani has said as well. It's interesting because I think part of succeeding within a culture and a group, whether it's a very male or white dominated company, is to mirror and absorb whatever is going on there. That's what culture, there's a certain homogeny and uniformity in culture. And you succeed by absorbing certain elements of that. But you definitely have to balance that with who am I, what do I bring to this? And I think those are things you also assess in joining that organization is what are their values, what are my values, do they value what I have to bring, can I add value here? I think the worst thing you can do is stay in a situation and in an environment that doesn't appreciate the uniqueness that you bring and doesn't appreciate the value that you bring. And so it's a balance. I think there are things that you have to absorb and mirror in order to fit in and succeed. But I think you shouldn't lose your identity, and you certainly shouldn't lose your identity.
In other words, as long as you're aware of what you're doing. Because
as
that in itself has become a
exactly,
strategy.
as long as you're aware of the trademarks that you're making, but certainly, or trade-offs that you're
Trade-offs,
making.
yeah.
But certainly not to compromise your femininity and not to compromise your
But
identity.
Matsi Modisi, you don't compromise on those core principles that Kanye is speaking about. You've got to be aware of it. So it's a stealth strategy. It's the art of surprise, as we've heard. But don't over-compromise because then you're letting yourself down as a person. And obviously one of the reasons why you were hired in the first place. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I'm one unemployable person. Nobody can employ me. So
Trust me, it takes one to know one.
Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But essentially, I think you can't compromise, whether it's a compromise on your happiness, compromise on your well-being. But in life, there always is a compromise. You have to decide, for me to succeed, It's not going to be everything that I want will follow suit. There are certain things that will have to fall off. Is it family? Is it relationships? Is it your health? So you have to kind of choose what it is that you're willing to compromise to get what it is that you want. But they're like non-negotiables. Like my happiness and my happy space is something that I cannot compromise on. I don't want a boss that's going to be breathing down my neck because I know I can't deal or, I can't really do well in that kind of environment. So there's certain things over time I've learned about myself and said, you know what, if I am in this particular environment, there's no way I'm actually going to succeed or to excel. Yeah.
I have 2 young daughters. They're in their 20s. And when I said to them that I was going to ask the next question, they said, Father, you are on your own on this one. But I think it's important because it's a question, it's often the elephant in the room. So, Christine, let me ask you this question. The emotions, you know where I'm going, don't you? And the nurturing skills sometimes that women have can negatively affect your performance in corporate life. Is that true?
Well, look, I have seen instances where emotions do run high.
Mati, don't look at me like that with dagger eyes. Okay.
And I think being women, it actually probably is more prevalent amongst women. I'm not saying it's only amongst women, because I've seen it actually being exhibited on both sides.
Yes.
But I agree that, when you are in a leadership role, and I think, one cannot become a leader overnight. I think, yes, you'd have the traits of leadership, but you certainly evolve into becoming a true leader. And I think that comes over a period of time with developing emotional maturity and acquiring the skills. Because as you become a leader, it's actually the softer skills. I'm saying, yes, you've got the foundation of technical skills, but as a leader, the softer skills play a more important role. I would say, percentage-wise, given that I'm an accountant, about 60% softer skills is actually required in, just being able to balance both.
Don't sound so defensive when you say you're an accountant. Basically, you rule the world. You know that.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, which maybe
Sandi,
should be that way.
What about you? Are you insulted by that question, or is there an element of truth in it?
No, I'm not insulted. I think, as Kanye was saying, you got to embrace your femininity, and if femininity comes with being more nurturing, it's good. At the end of the day, you want a team that can perform and do the best it can, and people need to be nurtured. They need to feel appreciated, and if that's what you bring to the party, then and you feel comfortable doing it, then I think you should definitely do it. But again, it's not something that is only a female skill. I think the challenge with that whole expectation of women to be nurturing is difficult, because if you are a woman who's not naturally nurturing, I think you find that you become, it's used against you. But why don't you exhibit these skills?
Yes.
So
Inauthentic nurturing is a terrible thing. Yes.
so it's tricky. So I think to the extent that one has it in their toolkit, I think it's a very valuable skill. I think people enjoy being nurtured, and I think they perform better. But if it's not in your toolkit, then use other skills.
Kanisa, what about you?
Yeah, so I don't see it as being a negative thing. I think it's actually quite positive, because for me, leadership is about how well you're able to connect with people and to inspire them and to unify them around a common purpose. And if that connection makes you successful in being able to build those connections, then there's nothing wrong with being a nurturing person at work.
Panel members, we're going to wrap it there. We have an incredibly busy schedule today. Folks, thank you very much for the honesty and for the insight. I do appreciate your time.